AI is fundamentally changing the way the SaaS industry works, and most consultants aren't paying attention. The question isn't whether this shift will happen, it's whether you're ahead of the curve, building solutions for where the market's going, or scrambling to catch up after your current platform becomes irrelevant. Hello, I'm Paul, and welcome to my podcast. And this is episode 660. And in today's episode, we talk to Scott Stafford. And you're going to learn a lot from Scott. Why users will stop logging into the SaaS platforms and start interacting with agents, and who's going to own the customer relationship. The real capabilities and limitations of vibe coding tools like Bolt.new, where they work and where they still need expertise, and how to think beyond your single platform so you're positioned for the AI future instead of being left behind. Scott is a human-centric technologist with over 20 years bridging business strategy and emerging technology. He's a 27-time Salesforce certified all-star ranger and a co-founder of Rise with Voice, helping people thrive in an AI-augmented future. I'll hand you now over to Scott Stafford. Fantastic to have you here, Scott.
Thank you so much. I'm really excited. I've heard a lot about this show, right? It's an honor to be on it.
Yeah, well, it's an honor to have you. And I can't believe we were literally probably meters apart back in 2025 at Dreamforce, and we didn't get a chance to meet in person. We've had to do it through Zoom, but hopefully next year, 2026, we can change that. And this will be coming out in January, but we're recording it in just before the end of 2025. Question I always love to start with is, who do you love to work with?
I love to work with people that have similar values to me. So I live by my core values. And for me, I usually get to know people before I engage in either a friendship or particularly in a business relationship. So as I get to know somebody and I really see what they stand for, like to say, hey, how can I help? How can I use my skills, my energy to help you in your journey? So that's what I really look forward to. And then I'm in the AI space. I really do like human-centric AI. Anyone that's in that space that's trying to bring this new technology to our world and make it a better place.
And what do you mean by human-centric? What's your version of that?
Sure. I think when I think of human-centric, I mean that it is being used to better humanity. So a lot of times we'll make technology, right? Whether it's the iPhone or something, and we won't think of what's the impact. I know what the impact is on my particular users, but what about my local community? Did it make that better? Or what about society as a whole? So I think as we unveil like all this new technology with AI, we should consider, hey, how can we use it to make society, right, better, right? And then also really kind of focus for like, what are we making things for, right? It should be people, process, technology. Make sure that you're not just selling a product, right, just because you can, right? Make sure that there's like a real demand and that you're using it for people, right? Which is the first part.
How do you, the scorecard, end of 2025, how do you think the major players in the space are going against what you just said?
I think that we actually had like a pivot. I think a lot of people were really excited. I mean, we had agentic solutions, and at first you saw everybody rolling that out and you thought people, oh, we're going to replace workers. And then I think people started to figure out that, hey, even as we did it and we brought up productivity, we were able to solve all the problems. People are really looking for human connection. And I think you're seeing that actually with Salesforce. I mean, they're hiring a lot of salespeople. They understand that technology, agentic solutions are going to be able to help us, right? They're going to make your job easier, but they're going to make it easier for you to connect with real people. That's what makes business happen.
I think, if you look at the computer, when it first started, it really just sped up so that humans could do more of what only humans could do. And I think, there was a whole lot of discussion around, this whole super intelligence and, this is the end of the human species as it is, because we're going to have all these, like the intelligence will surpass the human's capability. But keep getting reminded, and the head of Google mentioned it the other day, like at best, AI is 99% right. And the other thing is that AI, or the LLMs that it's drawing from, is actually from human information, and humans aren't always correct, right? So it's drawing from a huge database of information that's not 100% correct in the first place. Well, I think the projections were great, but I don't think we're going to get there anywhere near as quick as everyone's saying. That's my perspective. What's your perspective on that?
I kind of agree with that. Things are not going to roll out as fast as you're thinking. Though I do think the tech companies will offer a lot of solutions, but it's society ready, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we didn't necessarily. I go to hospitals and I tell them what we can do, and they're like, "Well, we didn't actually ask for that, right? We didn't ask for anything, you know." But you guys are here to offer your services, right? But what are we ready for? What are the patients looking for? What are humans looking for? I think that's really important. I think when I go down the streets of, and I'm here in Truckee, it's a small little town, and I say, "What are you guys looking for?" They say, "We're looking for literally more love." I mean, it comes out every time, and more connection. So if you can make agentic solutions that offer, right, the information and make it easier so that you could slow down and literally spend time with your customers and literally building those relationships, that's the golden, right, nugget I think out there.
Yeah, and it was, yesterday we were getting a home service and they've got, Sophie, an Australian accent is, I'm the after service. I've called in the middle of the day. It's a bit strange that you're after service. And then, said, I'm your AI assistant. I'm here to help you. And what would you like help with? I said, I'd like to cancel the service. And they're like, sorry, we can't do that. We'll get someone to contact you. Okay. So I hang up. And then no one contacts me. So I call back 2 days later and I get the exact same experience. It's like, that's not what I want. They're like, that's just dumb AI, right? It's like rushing to get the fact that I've got AI box ticked, but I'm actually not improving the experience for the consumer. Like you must see lots of examples of that.
Yeah, I think that one of the experiences I had was with my mom, and I helped my mom to understand a lot of the technologies that's rolling out. And as she has had experiences with Verizon, right? She has her cell phones, got to manage it. She has similar experiences, and she really wants to sometimes just say, "I want to vent." Right? She's looking for another person that she can connect and have them say, "Hey, I resonate with you," right? And
Yes.
then really allow her to be able to tell the stories. So sometimes we have these solutions that are quick to bring the answer. And maybe it's not the answer that you want to hear,
Yes.
right? So you want to make sure that, hey, as long as I got to, voice my opinion, I feel a lot better. And I think that's where human in the loop really needs to be there. You need to do sentiment analysis, right? Like they could have probably picked up that you were a little bit frustrated, right? And said, hey, this is time that somebody needs to call him back. Right.
Yeah.
And I think that's going to be the golden. Where is technology welcome? And then where do we need the humans to step in?
There's other situations where I would trust AI more than I'd trust a human, particularly when someone's selling me something, because I know that they're not going to try the old school tricks or, tell me things that aren't true. The AI is going to tell me the truth. So I think, it's horses for courses, right? It depends on the situation. But if I step back and look more at the macro picture, like know that you and I talked before coming on air about, who's going to own the end human, right? If we talk about this human-centered approach, who's going to own the human? So if I look at the moment, most of my work is done in the SaaS. So obviously you spend a lot of time in the Salesforce ecosystem. If I'm on Salesforce, I'm in the Salesforce app. I know they're trying to get you to do more in Slack, which is great, but ultimately it's within that SaaS ecosystem.
Right.
Meanwhile, now I'm spending a hell of a lot more time in, Gemini, Claude, etc. So to me, I'm sort of thinking, well, who's going to own that end customer experience in the future? Like when I worked at Coca-Cola, I had to go, I had to sell through a Walmart or whatever to actually get the product to consumers, right? It wasn't as if I was delivering straight to the door. I felt like the SaaS companies have owned that end customer experience, but will that be the way that it plays out? I'd love to get your view on that.
I think what you're going to see is you're going to see a lot of people using their agent in different places. So we'll probably all have our own agent, and our agent will be our new UI, right? It'll be our experience.
Right.
I was actually just talking to my mom about this, and I said, I can see really quickly in the near future that you can just literally sit in your living room and then just talk to your agent. Just say, hey, can you give me a rundown, right? On what bills need to be paid. And it'll just give you a little summary. Maybe if there's a bill that you want to see, you might say, hey, can you show me that on the projector or hologram? And then you would say, could you just pay all those and document all that stuff? And then my mom likes to print out, put it in a book, and you could say, hey, print that out, right? I'll go pick it up. Or in the future, if Charlie Isaac has it his way, right, we'll have a little robot go pick that up, staple it up, and put it in a binder for my mom, right? But then what's my mom need to do, right? She needs to make sure she didn't get up, right, and go do that work. So now she has free time that she can go out in the backyard and actually do some gardening or something. We have to remember that we're going to use this technology, but as humans, we still need to move. We still need to say, hey, it's time to interact, right? I have time for tea now, right? And literally just have a chat with somebody. Those deep, authentic communications, what we need.
And that agent, is that, are we talking about what Sam and Jonathan are trying to create, which I know there's a lot of debate at the moment whether humans want screens or not screens. There's a whole discussion around that. But do you think these agents, will it actually be something that you wear and talk into? Like, how are we interacting with these agents in your mind?
I actually think that Meta might be like on the first phase. If you've seen Meta's glasses, I know there was a lot of glitches, but the idea is that you can visually see it maybe on your glasses, get a little reference, and then continue with your life. So I am a really big proponent, right, of getting off of my screen, trying to do a certain percentage of my work every day, just with my phone and outside on the trails out there. And I'm amazed of how much I can actually get done. I mean, you can literally put in voice mode, do ChatGPT, write things up, send them, right? It's quite incredible. So I'm about 20%, right, of my workload that I actually just do on the hiking trail. Phenomenal.
So let's say the future is that you're not logging into Salesforce or Slack or whatever like you currently do. You're more talking, whether it's through, your glasses, however your hologram, like you said, you're interacting. Where does that then put the role of the SaaS? Like, is SaaS then becomes the protector of the data that the agent is getting the information from? Is that sort of how it all fit together in your mind?
I think you're going to have a lot of the SaaS, the back end, that still needs the work, right? You're going to have all that data, right, and all those work rules somewhere. But your user interface is probably going to be more with agents. So I actually predict long-term, you're going to see more jobs, right? You're going to see people that are needing to create, right, and manage and govern the agents for every person on this planet, which is about 8 billion. So that's a lot of agents that we need to keep track of. Then we have on the back end, right, you're going to still need different SaaS products, right? The agent's going to want to store that interaction or that different asset that it referenced out in the field somewhere. And that's where, for example, Salesforce Field Service does a really great job with assets. So I think that would really work well.
And who's going to own this agent? Like, if I look at the moment, one of the complexities I deal with is I've got Notion, I've got Slack, I've got Gmail, I've got WhatsApp, like even Dreamforce was a nightmare because I'm communicating with all these people on different platforms. I'm like, I just want it all in one place, right?
I hear you.
Yeah. We've all faced that. Like, do you think there will be someone that wins that? Or, like, for example, everyone talks about Google being slow to AI, but eventually they'll win the race. Do you think it will be the Google, the Metas, those companies that will own it, that agent, front-facing interface?
I think there'll be probably a few different winners, right? Because I think that the agent, right, is agency, and it's really whoever resonates with you. So for me, I'm an Apple guy. I love Apple now. I didn't start out that way, right?
Yes.
But I use a lot of Apple products. Back in the day, when I first got out of college, I loved Microsoft. I was really into that ecosystem.
Yes.
So whoever you like, right, you probably identify. So for me, I use ChatGPT in voice mode. I've tried Meta, I've tried a lot of them. It's just, I kind of started out there, right? But there's other people that they're Gork, right? That's just who they resonate with. So I think we'll probably have, a fair amount, maybe 4 or 5 major agents, and they'll be interacting with each other. But I just think it kind of talks to a little bit about like who you are and how you feel that company like kind of resonates with your values.
Got you. And do you think some of the, there's been talk around some of the like task managers, whether it's Asana and, ClickUp, etc. Will they be less relevant in the future if you're using this agent? You won't need a task manager per se because the agent will be doing that on your behalf? Or will it be those products will have their own form of agent? Like, have you got a view on which way you think that'll play out?
I think that a lot of the small little platforms will actually get eaten up, either merged together, right, or just disappear. Now, Salesforce has a very large ecosystem, and the complications of what the workflow is happening on the back end of the CRM is a lot different than some of these small little apps that, that we've started to use. But they're actually kind of doing a very, very small little niche market for us. And when you're going to build things AI first, and right now, I think what we have is a lot of AI overlay. So we had a product, right? And we wanted to quickly get to market, and say, hey, we have an AI product. So we quickly overlaid some AI on it. But then you're going to start to get things and say, hey, I want to build this ground up with AI. I don't necessarily need it to function this way anymore. And I think you could even see a lot of that happening in Salesforce. I mean, just as an admin, all the little buttons you need to click, and you're like, do we really need? Can we just talk to it? It could figure out where that stuff is, right? Yes. I don't need to go hunt to figure out how to reconfigure somebody's profile or something, or permissions, right?
Yeah.
So I think you're going to see a lot of the little small ones, right? Probably a little bit more, merged together, and then some will probably go out of business, and then there'll be more of the big players.
Yeah, gotcha. Oh, yeah. Look, I think the same. And I think in some of the share prices, like a Monday, et cetera, it's already been reflected. They've certainly come down because I think their relevance is less so. And, that's why I've always said, you're not a Monday partner, you're not a Zoho partner. You're someone that solves a certain problem for a particular clients, and you just happen to use the tool. Like when the plumber comes and fixes your leaky tap, you don't ask them what wrench they've got, what drill they've got. You just want them to fix the leak, right? So I think that'll be more so. And then the other thing, which I think I agree with, is the natural language. Like humans are best at talking. Unfortunately, the technology wasn't good enough that we had to use a keyboard, right? But no one loves a keyboard. No one loves a mouse. Like it's not the thing. I just want the outcome. Okay, I've got to use a keyboard to get to the outcome. But I think that's where that natural language, like you said, you're at 20% at the moment. I think that's going to become more and more. And like I know for me personally, I use something called, I always forget the exact name, but it's Super Whisperer. And, I use that now. So, it's fantastic. I just talk everything. I try not to type unless I absolutely, I think the LLMs are also supportive of that now. And so that's a good discussion around the future of SaaS and AI. If we go more into some of the things, coming out of Dreamforce, a lot of it was around vibe coding. It was a key theme. What's your view on vibe coding and, the place where the value it's got now and where you see it going within the ecosystem? Yeah,
I'm going to kind of hit back on your first, last topic there, a little bit about natural language and in voice mode, and then touch on this one. So sure. I think for your listeners, I think they need to make sure, right, that they're future-proofing this stuff. Start to think about what is going to happen. And literally, I've been telling people for over a year, right? Things are going to move more and more to voice. You're seeing a lot of products that are starting to master it. So you need to try it out, right? If they're free, ChatGPT, Meta, everybody has a voice mode and they're getting better and better. So let's go to vibe coding. The same thing applies, right? Everybody needs to see what it can do. Right. Definitely. Yeah. We think we both talked about Bolt.net. We got on there and we think, hey, it's pretty good. And I'm find out what it's good at and then where are the limitations. Right. And where the limitations are is when you're going to need some people that have a little bit more expertise. So I found that it could really set things up pretty good. But on the back end, on the far back end, it had some issues, right? You still needed to go back and, add some things to public files or something. And you might need someone with a little more expertise, an old coder that's learned to adapt to vibe coding, but still understands what's going on. So both of those, I think, is where you need to be. You need to be testing out voice mode and get an appreciation for it, right? Yes. And then you also need to be practicing as much as you can with vibe coding. That's what everybody is telling you, right? When I went to Stripe, right, we had Mark Zuckerberg come up on the stage and they were trying to say, hey, let's try some vibe coding. Catch what they're telling you to do and then do it.
Yeah. And the thing I'm interested in is, so for example, I'm working with a Monday partner at the moment and he's doing a lot of custom AI. So he's actually going to continue his Monday business, but now he's building custom code for specific niches, right? And what would normally have taken, 100, 150 hours is taking maybe 7 to 10 hours with the way that he's doing his vibe coding. So that's brilliant. But he's got a particular skill to be able to do that, right? And he's come from that developer background. So what I'm hearing from you is, there's a lot of talk, you can go and create your own CRM, you can go and do whatever. But my experience was that it sounds great from a user experience, but when you get into the detail of the data and the back end, that's where a Bolt.new or whatever says, okay, sorry, I'm out of out of my league here and you need to go talk to someone. Is that sort of how you see it playing out? Like these YouTube or TikTok videos, like you can create this, you don't need that. To me, I'm thinking it's not that easy. Has that been your experience?
Especially with Bolt.com. I mean, they tried to make everything seem really easy. So when I was trying to configure the DNS, they didn't really explain how it necessarily worked, right? But they had a way but when it doesn't work like it's supposed to, now what do you do? And a lot of times there's nobody on customer service. I don't want to knock Bolt.com, but I wrote them and they never got back to me. So I'd like, okay, well, let me, watch a little bit more. Let me figure out how the DNS really works and everything like that. And then I solved it. And I'm like, okay, you guys tried to oversimplify, right? But sometimes you actually need some knowledge about how all this works. And I think that's kind of where we're going in computer science. Before, you used to be able to be a little bit more just niche, right? I'm CRM. I really don't understand much about, some of these other platforms. But now you need to understand a little bit broader, right? Of how things are interacting. Hey, if it's the CRM and now we're actually surfacing our agent in Slack, how does that work? Or how is all this, working in other products out there, right? How are they going to interact? So it's kind of widening up, but you don't need to go as deep anymore. You just need to have a little bit more knowledge, cursory out there.
And what about, like Salesforce App Exchange has been hugely successful, right? Like if I even look at Dreamforce, the share of space, I forget the exact analogy they use, but there were so many brilliant ISV partners with their apps there, right? Do you see that will continue as they're using AI to help them improve their development and their coding, i.e.
Right.
It becomes easier to create a product? Yeah, and I know that I had, Sanjeet on from KizzyConsulting.com, who you're currently doing some work for. I had him on episode 625 and we spoke about that. I think it's a really good point. I think if you're only thinking platform, I think at the moment that's a risk. If you're just one platform, I think you do have to think broader in these AI solutions that you can create for your clients where the SaaS platform doesn't meet. Is that what I'm hearing?
Exactly what you're saying is this mindset shift. So try sometime get away from your computer, just go sit somewhere and say, what will the world be like? Yes. Try to envision a world where people are literally not going on their computer, that they're just walking into a room and talking about it. And then gain that understanding where that's a long term, that's where we're going to go. You're literally just going to walk into a room and say, computer, give me summarize this. And people do have holograms already, right? And you'll say, hey, show me a hologram of that, right? I don't want to go typing, just show me it and I'll interact with it with my hand. That's going to be the future. And then kind of think about your product, right? We're not there yet. And you still have a lot of time to adapt. But if you don't have that mindset, I think you're going to be left behind. For a lot of people that are coders, I think sometimes that they have always been on the keyboard. They have always traditionally done it one way. And sometimes I think it's easier for me to grab someone just right out of college who is not doing it at all and say, hey, this is where the world's going. It's going full mode. Focus on this. And you don't have to fight them as much. But sometimes I talk to coders and they're like, well, it's, we always got to do like this. I'm like, okay, but you gotta lose that. It's not going to be like that anymore. Go watch some of these, old movies where you see people just talking to the computer. That's what it's going to be like.
I think, that's great. The Wayne Gretzky comment, you got to go where the puck's going, right? It's like you got to follow where this trend is going. One of the things that blew me away when we did have a discussion the other week was around robotics and how robotics and Salesforce could play together in the future. Can you just give us a little bit of of your future vision of how that it's going to play out?
Yeah, initially when I thought a lot about robotics, I mean, you probably saw Boston Dynamics. You see all these robots dancing, right? They have some great firmware on there that's allowing them to do a few minor functions. And even at Stanford, we have some robots there and you can control them with your hand and go like this. But as the robot starts interacting more with the world, right? It's going to encounter a lot of different objects. A lot of things are going to need to be stored, assets, relationships between those. And as you start thinking like, well, the robotic companies, they've done a great job, right? They figured out how to make some hardware, make the firmware work pretty well. But you're probably going to need, right, a CRM, right? This time is not going to be for the customer. It's going to be holding a lot of data for your robot. And it interacted and went out to the barn, and then it saw like, oh, there was a snake. Well, now it's going to put that there. And how do I interact with the snake, right? And it'll create a little workflow rule in the background. Charlie Isaac at Salesforce has been doing just an amazing job, right, with the robots. And he's really showing you a lot of stuff, how Salesforce Agentforce Robotics Lab is going to become really important. Whether you're working with Boston Dynamics, whether it's a Tesla robot, you're still, right, probably going to need something on the back end to store all of this data.
Yeah, right. And so what's a business example you could give? Let's say that I'm a Salesforce partner and, I'm in mid-market space. Like, what would a robot be doing in my customer's business as an example from what you've seen?
I'm going to give you an example similar to a company that you probably could imagine, Coca-Cola.
Yes.
Now, I know that you have a little bit of a relationship with Coca-Cola, right? But you have a lot of times where Coca-Cola will have assets out in the field, right? And just the logistics of sending somebody out there, right? It's just out in the remote part of the area. We're not going to get somebody in there to literally go in there and adjust these valves probably for 3 or 4 hours. But if there was just a quick, not very expensive robot right on the premises, and you can actually have it grounded, right? That it understands all the assets in the field, right? And it could carry that out. You're like, hey, that was great, right? We didn't have to send somebody out there. We freed the humans that do some more of that human interaction, maybe at another partner company, right? And the robots handling things. You can think about that in a very big scenario of solar panel fields. There's just a heck of a lot of solar panels out there, right? Just to get a guy to go and turn a few screws, adjust something, right? And a truck, he's going to be driving all over the place. But you could literally have, what I like to call physical AI, right? Yes. Literally going in there, taking care of those things, right?
Gotcha. And that's where you think that the data itself's got to sit somewhere, and you think, Salesforce will continue to play a very important role in that moving forward.
Right. And then whatever it does, I mean, the data of interaction that it did, if it adjusts something, right, we're going to log that, right? On this X date, this is what I did. Here's a picture of what actually happened. And that way, we can troubleshoot it in case that doesn't work. So that has to be stored somewhere, right? Just like today, right? But the new UI, right? The new interface there is now a robot, right? But we still have the back-end systems.
Very exciting, very exciting. Well, what we're going to do is pause for a moment. We're going to thank our sponsors, and then we'll come back to the rapid fire.
Perfect. I love it.
Quick break. If you're getting value from these stories, join my newsletter. Every week I share what's working with tech consultants escaping the project grind. Who to target, what business models work best, real client transformations. No fluff, just the pattern I've seen work over 200 times. Join at paulhigginsmentoring.com newsletter. Now back to the podcast. So Scott, ready for the rapid fire?
I am ready for the rapid fire.
So what's
getting fast, right?
Yeah, what's something that you talked about voice with ChatGPT, etc. But what's another AI tool that you're really blown away with at the moment? Something that you're using? I'm
actually really getting into NVIDIA. Their whole CUDA, right? And being able to use software to actually control, right, how their different GPUs work, I think is just pretty smart, right? As I've diving in more and more to just like the hardware behind AI, right? I'm just like, wow, blown away. Like, I wouldn't have thought of that, but it's very necessary, where we're going.
Fantastic. And have you got NVIDIA shares?
No, I don't.
No, same here, unfortunately. When you look at some of the clients that you work for, including, Kizzy Consulting with Sanjeet, what are some of the go-to-market strategies for those Salesforce partners that are evolving? What are you seeing some of the go-to-market strategies that are working really well?
Yeah, especially like you mentioned with Kizzy Consulting, it's all about relationship,
Yeah.
right? AI's here, right? There's all kinds of solutions to help you to be able to sell to people. But what we're really seeing is build the relationship first.
Yeah.
I mean, you're hearing that from a lot of people. It's about people and it's becoming more important. Build the relationship and the rest of it comes natural.
Yeah, correct. Well, ultimately, in any job, you want to be only doing the things that you can only do. I think for humans, we've got to be only doing the things that we can do, right? Let the
That makes sense.
AI take everything else. Where do you talk about NVIDIA. I know you're doing some work on learning about AWS, but where do you go to get all this knowledge? Like, what's the best way for you to learn?
Yeah, I think you can go for NVIDIA. They actually have a really great training program. So I just signed up and got it directly from them, right? Yeah. I actually signed up for their unlimited library because I literally loved their curriculum so much. And then, but in general, right, if you're looking to understand more holistically AI, I would suggest some of the major universities. They're starting to offer a lot of programs. Stanford has a Gen AI program, and you literally get the perspective of like 15 different thought leaders and, major professors. So realize that when you get learning material from a company, they're tilting, your point of view a little bit just to serve their market. Even Salesforce. I mean, I love Trailhead. Right. But I do realize that I gained a lot of deeper perspective when I took the Stanford classes.
Yeah. And I think you've been a little bit kind by saying little. But anyway, you've been in the AI space for quite some time now. What do you know now that you wish you had have known earlier about AI?
I think that I would realize now that it's going to go a lot faster than I thought. And realizing that a lot of humans, we think linearly. I was pretty good to understand, hey, it's going to go like this. But it is literally able to like double. So start to understand. Think about how fast we are doubling, in the back of the day. We went from 286 to 386 to 486 to Pentium. It doubled. And we didn't really quite understand how much computational power doubled. Now with AI and how fast it's actually going to be changing this world, right? It's going to go a lot quicker than I think people realize.
And, I think for me, the big opportunity is to, like even for my own business, I use it, the way that I'm using it versus 12 months ago is brilliant. Like if I look at it, it's just been an incredible experience. But my revenue hasn't 10 times, or my revenue hasn't 50 times, right? So I can't wait till it's actually bringing, more direct revenue benefit versus what it is at the moment. But I'm sure that's the next phase of it. Brilliant having you on. You can go to Scott's LinkedIn. I'll talk about it more in the outro, how you can get in contact with him. But Scott, thanks for coming on and sharing a view about AI that I know no one else has shared on the podcast to date, and we're 660 in.
Well, thank you so much, Paul. And then I'm really looking forward, right, to actually seeing you up in person. We work so close to each other. Right. So I want all your audience, right, when you see us at Dreamforce next year, right, and connecting, we'll make some fun videos and we'll put those on LinkedIn. So we'll follow up and keep this moving.
Fantastic.
Thank you so much, Paul.
Scott's message is clear. The SaaS landscape is shifting faster than most consultants realize. The ones who think beyond their single platform and start building AI-first solutions will thrive. The ones who wait until the change hits them, they will be scrambling. Reach out to Scott Stafford on LinkedIn and thank him and ask him questions. He's a very pleasant guy and incredibly knowledgeable, as you've just learned. You can also check out his initiative, Rise with Voice. You can watch his episode at the Paul Higgins Mentoring YouTube channel. And if you like it, please subscribe. And I will see you next time on the Paul Higgins podcast. What's your key takeaway from today? I'd love to hear. Want weekly insights on who to target and what to sell? Join my newsletter at paulhigginsmentoring.com/newsletter and share this with another tech consultant ready to escape the project grind.